In 1837, a teenage girl takes the reins of the most powerful empire on earth. Her rise to power ignites turmoil throughout Great Britain. Both her subjects and her government view her as spoiled, impetuous, and unprepared to rule. Her name was Queen Victoria.
She was only 18 when she came to the throne, and she'd had a very, very difficult first couple of years on the throne, and in fact was very unpopular.
There was little to indicate this immature girl would grow up to become a revered symbol of the empire's immense power. Her transformation started when she married her cousin Albert in 1840.
She fell in love almost at first sight. All her life, actually, she wants someone to lean on, metaphorically and indeed literally. And Albert is able to take her in hand, rather. So he comes in and he helps her grow up.
By this time, the empire stretched around the world, from North America to Australia. Albert and Victoria pushed for greatness in engineering and technology, knowing how crucial these advances were to their expanding empire. None more so than the emerging technology of the telegraph.
You've got an empire which is extending literally around the globe. People talked about the annihilation of space and time through electrical telegraph.
The telegraph industry exploded around the world, with Britain leading the charge. During the mid-19th century, over 97,000 miles of twisted steel telegraph cables were laid. A message could now be sent from Britain to India in a matter of hours. The world's first information superhighway had arrived, and with it, the empire could consolidate its power more effectively than ever before.
It's an enormous feat, no question. It's something which simply was not conceivable before they did it.
Engineering advances not only united the empire, they triggered a manufacturing boom unlike any seen before. People flocked from rural areas to city centers to take advantage of job opportunities. And as productivity skyrocketed, so did the population of its nerve center, London.
So whereas it had been 1 million at the beginning of the 19th century, it was then, by the 1850s, it was already 2 million. And London was not designed for this. And there was terrible overcrowding. Really, people were living as though they were in a chicken coop.
London was bursting with people. Cramped and overcrowded, sanitation problems spread like wildfire. Waste flowed into sewers meant only for rainwater, filling it with raw sewage that emptied directly into the Thames River. The situation was ripe for disaster.
Now, you would think the Thames, huge river, that would be a great way of disposing of London's waste. But unfortunately, it was also London's water supply. So the waste of 2 million Londoners was being shunted into the Thames, and then Londoners were actually drinking this.
1848. Catastrophe strikes London. A cholera epidemic sweeps through the congested city, killing more than 14,000. 3 years later, another outbreak occurs, claiming an additional 10,000 victims. Cemeteries fill up with bodies. The most advanced city in the world faced conditions that had not been seen since the Black Death of the Middle Ages.
In the space of 30 years, over 30,000 Londoners died, and this was because of cholera, and because cholera was spreading through London's polluted water supply. It was shocking.
Something needed to be done. England turned to an engineer by the name of Joseph Bazalgette. His solution would revolutionize urban planning. He and thousands of city workers would build the most advanced sewer system to date. Bazalgette's innovative plan was to install giant intercepting sewers on each side of the Thames, running parallel to the water. These main pipes would be connected to more than 1,300 miles of older city sewers, collecting the waste and diverting it away from the river.
The genius of the system was that gravity was used wherever possible to actually move the sewage out of London. So the sewers actually ran at an incline.
When gravity wasn't enough to carry the flow, Bazalgette built grand pumping stations. There, large steam-driven engines lifted the sewage until gravity could take over once again. The sewers guided the waste into 2 deep reservoirs, where it would be stored and released at high tide, when nature could dispose of it neatly.
The sewer system really was one of the marvels of the 19th century. It used 300 million bricks. There was extraordinary earth moving. It was a truly colossal task and brilliant, amazing.
This extraordinary engineering feat transformed London into the first modern glittering metropolis. Cities throughout Europe studied its design with awe. But the disease epidemic wouldn't be the last crisis of Victoria's reign.
If you read Hard Times or Oliver Twist or David Copperfield or any of the other genius works by Charles Dickens, you'll get a sense of the staggering overpopulation in London in the 19th century. And some of the fallout of this horror was the sheer volume of traffic in London, a chaos of pedestrians and horses and carriages and carts hauling everything from hay to hardware. The traffic from the south alone was bottlenecking the London Bridge such that London felt like it was choking to death on its own success. London needed another river crossing, but a traditional bridge would block the big merchant boats coming up river to the port. No, what London needed was a drawbridge, like that one.
The drawbridge would be the largest and most sophisticated of its kind. It would be called the Tower Bridge. The structure is solid steel covered in stone to make it look like the nearby Tower of London. When the bridge was built, the 1,200-ton leaves, or bascules, were lifted by steam-driven engines. The power-turned toothed pinions along a curved steel rack riveted to the outside girders. A solid pivot rotated as the pinion raised the structure. The bascules lifted to an 83-degree angle, allowing ships to pass through.
The rising of the bridge only took 1 minute to raise it, so it was an incredible feat of engineering.
It took more than 400 men and 8 years to build Tower Bridge. Today it is one of the most famous and recognizable bridges in the world. Despite being the driving force behind these staggering works of engineering, Albert didn't live to see them. He died in 1861, shattering Victoria.
Queen Victoria fell into grief the like you have never seen.
For close to 10 years, Victoria sat in isolation from her country. But when she finally re-emerged into public life, she was stronger and more powerful than ever before. The immature teenager had redefined herself into a ruler of the modern age and took her rightful place as leader of the British Empire.
All over the world, statues to Victoria are erected. There are massive celebrations all over the world, and in many cases, those celebrations are joined by the colonized peoples. She becomes a figure of affection.
Victoria had become the symbol of the empire's splendor and might, and her reign would mark the apex of British power around the world. The British Empire now had possessions on every major continent and could claim more than 400 million people under its rule. No other country could rival its immense power. It was the largest empire the world would ever see.